Excuse me, young lady, are you lost? Graham Caldwell's voice cut through the gleaming lobby of Apex Innovations, his sharp eyes locked on a small figure clutching a worn leather portfolio. 8-year-old Zoe Carter, barely 4 feet tall, stood resolute in her pressed blue dress. I'm here for my mom's interview, sir. She's in the hospital, but she's the best engineer you'll ever meet. This bold declaration in a towering Seattle tech empire sparked a story of courage, buried secrets, and transformation that no one, not even the hardened CEO, could predict. Stay with us as hearts clash and empires evolve, leading to a heartwarming ending you won't want to miss. Subscribe for every twist and comment. Where are you tuning in from? And when? Wonder how a child reshapes everything? Keep listening. The morning sun glinted off the steel and glass facade of Apex Innovations, casting sharp reflections across Seattle's bustling downtown. Inside the 40-story headquarters, the marble lobby hummed with purpose. Executives in tailored suits darted past, their footsteps a staccato rhythm against the polished floor, while phones buzzed and voices overlapped in a symphony of ambition. Amid this corporate dance, a small figure slipped through the revolving doors, unnoticed at first. Zoe Carter, 8 years old, adjusted her backpack, her honey-brown ponytail bobbing as she clutched a worn leather portfolio. Her blue dress, ironed meticulously by her mother the night before, felt like armor, though her sneakers squeaked faintly with each step. She whispered to herself, "You've got this, Zoe," her voice barely audible over the lobby's din. She approached the reception desk, standing on tiptoes to peer over the counter. Sarah, the receptionist, glanced up from her computer, her smile freezing into confusion. "Sweetheart, are you lost? Where's your mom?" she asked, her tone gentle but laced with concern. Zoe straightened, her hazel eyes steady. "I'm not lost. I have a 9 a.m. appointment with Mr. Graham Caldwell. My mom, Laura Carter, is interviewing for the software engineer position." She slid the portfolio across the counter, its edges frayed but contents pristine. "I'm here in her place." Sarah's brow furrowed, her fingers pausing over the keyboard. "Honey, that's not how interviews work. Your mom needs to come herself." Zoe's lips tightened, but her voice held firm. "She can't. She's in the hospital. They took her last night. She couldn't breathe right, but she needs this job." Her small hand rested protectively on the portfolio, as if shielding her mother's dreams. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but a deep voice cut through the air. "Sarah, what's going on here?" Graham Caldwell, CEO of Apex Innovations, stood nearby, his charcoal suit impeccable, his salt and pepper hair catching the light. At 42, he was a titan in Seattle's tech scene, known for ruthless efficiency and a gaze that could silence a boardroom. His blue eyes studied Zoe, curiosity flickering beneath his usual stoicism. Sarah stammered, "Mr. Caldwell, this girl, Zoe, says she's here for her mother's interview. Her mother's in the hospital." Graham's expression didn't shift, but his silence was heavy, assessing. Most would have faltered under that stare, but Zoe met it directly. "My mom taught me to look people in the eye when I speak, sir. She's the best engineer you'll find." A faint twitch of amusement crossed Graham's face, a rare crack in his armored demeanor. He glanced at his watch, 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes before a critical investor call, then back at the girl. Against every instinct honed over 2 decades of corporate discipline, he found himself intrigued. "Zoe Carter," he said, his voice low but commanding, "I've overseen thousands of interviews, but a child standing in for her mother is a first. What makes you think you can represent her?" Zoe unzipped the portfolio with practiced care, revealing Laura Carter's resume, certificates, and project summaries. "My mom's been a software engineer for 10 years. She has a master's from the University of Washington and led a team that built an app with 2 million users before her last company went under. She stayed up all night preparing for this, even when she was coughing." Her voice wavered, betraying a flicker of fear, but she pushed on. "We need this job for her medicine. I promised I'd try." Graham's jaw tightened, a memory stirring. His sister Emily, frail and fighting for breath in a hospital bed years ago, her small hand clutching his. He shoved the thought down, focusing on the present. Sarah, reschedule my 9 o'clock call, he said, ignoring her wide-eyed shock. To Zoe, he extended a hand toward the executive elevator. Let's go to my office. Show me what your mother prepared. Sarah's mouth fell open, but Zoe nodded, her pigtails bouncing as she followed, portfolio hugged to her chest. The elevator hummed upward, its glass walls revealing Seattle's skyline. Graham glanced at the girl beside him, her determination a stark contrast to her small frame. Do you always carry your mother's work like this? He asked, half testing her. Zoe grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. Only when it's important. Mom says I'm her best assistant, but I'm not allowed to make coffee yet. For the first time in years, Graham's lips curved into a genuine smile, the sound of her voice pulling at something long buried. They stepped into his office, a sleek expanse of dark wood and glass, the city sprawling below. Graham gestured to a plush chair across his desk, where Zoe sat, dwarfed but undaunted. She opened the portfolio, pointing to a neatly typed resume. Mom's coded for big projects, payment systems, health apps. She's got a certification in Agile, too. Graham raised an eyebrow, impressed by her fluency with terms most adults stumbled over. And why does your mother want to work at Apex? He asked, leaning back. Zoe's answer was unflinchingly honest. We need health insurance. Mom's medicine is expensive, and the hospital bills keep coming. But she also says Apex builds things that matter, like apps that help doctors save people. Her directness caught Graham off guard. Most candidates spun tales of passion for innovation. Zoe's raw truth was disarming. He flipped through Laura's resume, noting her impeccable track record. Who's looking after you while your mom's in the hospital? He asked, his tone softer now. Mrs. Larson next door checks on me, but she's old and forgets stuff. I make my own lunch for school. Zoe shrugged, as if it were nothing. Graham's chest tightened, the image of his sister's empty hospital room flashing again. He pressed his intercom. James, cancel my morning meetings and find out who's treating Laura Carter at Seattle General. His assistant's voice crackled, stunned. Sir, you've got the investor presentation at 10:30. Reschedule it, Graham cut in, his eyes on Zoe. She looked up, wide-eyed. Are you going to see my mom? Graham stood, adjusting his cufflinks. We're going to see her. I need to meet the woman who raised someone as remarkable as you. Zoe's face lit up, and she slipped her hand into his as they headed for the elevator. The simple trust in her grip stirred something Graham hadn't felt in years. Hope, fragile but undeniable. As they stepped into the elevator, Zoe glanced up. Mr. Caldwell, why are you helping us? Mom says important people don't usually have time. The question hit like a quiet thunderbolt. Graham hesitated, then said, Let's just say you've done what no one else has, gotten my full attention. The doors closed, sealing their unlikely alliance as the city blurred below. Neither knew this moment would spark a revolution, not just in Apex innovations, but in Graham's guarded heart, setting the stage for a battle that would redefine everything he thought he valued. The elevator's hum faded as Graham Caldwell and Zoe Carter stepped out, the sterile scent of Seattle General Hospital replacing the polished air of Apex Innovations. Graham's polished shoes clicked against the linoleum, a stark contrast to Zoe's soft sneaker squeaks. She clutched her mother's portfolio, her small frame radiating purpose as they navigated the bustling corridors. Nurses pushed carts, monitors beeped, and families whispered in hushed tones. But Zoe moved with a familiarity that unsettled Graham. Her hazel eyes scanned room numbers with practiced ease, as if hospital halls were as routine as a school playground. Graham's chest tightened. How many times had this child walked these paths alone? He shoved the thought aside, focusing on the mission at hand. Room 317 loomed ahead, its door slightly ajar. Zoe pushed it open, revealing Laura Carter propped up in a hospital bed, an oxygen mask dangling nearby. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, her face pale but sharp with determination. Zoe! Laura's hoarse voice cracked with alarm. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be with Mrs. Larson. Her eyes widened as Graham stepped into view, his charcoal suit stark against the room's clinical white. Oh my God, Mr. Caldwell? Zoe bounded to her mother's side, portfolio still in hand. Mom, I went to your interview. Mr. Caldwell brought me to see you. Laura's face drained further, her hands gripping the bedrail. You did what? she rasped, mortification etching her features. Graham raised a hand, his voice calm but authoritative. Ms. Carter, your daughter made quite an impression. She presented your portfolio with more poise than most executives I've met. Laura struggled to sit up, wincing as the IV tugged at her arm. I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell. I told Zoe to call and reschedule. Not this. Her voice wavered, caught between embarrassment and exhaustion. Zoe's face fell, but she stood her ground. You worked so hard on your presentation, Mom. I couldn't let it go to waste. We need this job. The raw honesty silenced the room, the beeping monitor the only sound for a moment. Graham pulled a chair beside the bed, his piercing gaze softening as he studied Laura. Zoe tells me you're a software engineer with a decade of experience. Why don't you walk me through it? Laura hesitated, glancing at Zoe, who nodded encouragingly. I have a master's in computer science from the University of Washington, Laura began, her voice gaining strength. I led a team at Nexus Tech, developing a payment platform with 2 million active users. When they folded, I applied to 6 companies, but she trailed off, her eyes flickering with frustration. But they saw a single mother as a liability, Graham finished, his tone clipped, but not unkind. Laura nodded, her jaw tight. They never say it outright, but the questions about flexibility, about missing work for Zoe, they make it clear. Graham leaned forward, flipping through the portfolio Zoe had handed him. Laura's credentials were impeccable. Agile certifications, glowing performance reviews, and a track record of delivering under pressure. Yet the rejections told a different story, one Graham recognized too well. His mind flashed to Emily, his younger sister, whose hospital bills had piled up when he was barely out of college. He'd been powerless then, unable to secure the care she needed. Now faced with Laura's tired but defiant eyes, he felt that old helplessness stir. Ms. Carter, he said, his voice steady, I've arranged for your medical bills to be covered. Consider it an investment in a potential asset to Apex. Laura's breath caught, her eyes narrowing. I don't want charity, Mr. Caldwell. I want a chance to prove myself. And you'll have it, Graham replied, standing. Once you're recovered, we'll schedule your official interview. Zoe's already made a compelling case. Zoe grinned, but Laura's expression remained guarded. Why are you doing this? She asked, echoing her daughter's earlier question. Graham paused, the weight of her gaze pulling at something raw. Because I've seen what happens when talent is overlooked for the wrong reasons, he said, his voice quieter now. And because your daughter reminded me that courage deserves a response. Zoe tugged at Graham's sleeve, her missing tooth flashing in a smile. See, Mom? I told you he'd listen. Laura's eyes softened, but worry lingered. Zoe, you can't just walk into a CEO's office like that. Her voice held a mix of pride and exasperation. Graham's lips twitched, the closest he'd come to a laugh in months. She didn't just walk in, Ms. Carter. She commanded the room. As they prepared to leave, Graham's phone buzzed. James, his assistant, with a clipped message. The board's asking about your canceled meetings. Investors are antsy. Graham's jaw tightened. His decision to prioritize Zoe was already rippling through Apex's tightly wound hierarchy. Tell them I'm handling it, he replied, ending the call. To Laura, he said, focus on getting better. We'll talk soon. Zoe slipped her hand into his as they walked back to the corridor, her small fingers warm against his calloused palm. Mr. Caldwell, do you think Mom will get the job? She asked, her voice bright but tinged with worry. Graham glanced down, her trust disarming him. I think your mom has a better shot than most, thanks to you. Outside, the rain had started, a soft patter against the hospital windows. Graham's driver waited, but he lingered, watching Zoe skip ahead, her backpack bouncing. The image burned into him, a child carrying burdens no 8-year-old should. Back at Apex, whispers were already spreading. The CEO, known as the Iron Titan, had let a child into his office. Worse, he'd canceled meetings for her. Graham knew the boardroom vultures would circle, but as he watched Zoe's determined stride, he felt something shift. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about righting a wrong he hadn't even known he was fighting. As the car pulled away, Zoe pressed her face to the window, waving at the hospital. Graham's phone buzzed again, but he ignored it. For the first time in years, his priorities felt clear, even if the path ahead was anything but. The girl beside him had sparked something, a flicker of purpose that threatened to upend his carefully constructed world. And as Seattle's skyline loomed, he wondered just how far that spark would burn. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle blurred past as Graham Caldwell's car wound toward Apex Innovations. Zoe Carter's small frame tucked into the back seat, her portfolio still clutched tight. Her question from the hospital lingered in Graham's mind. "Do you think Mom will get the job?" He hadn't answered with certainty, but the weight of her hope pressed against him, stirring memories of promises he'd failed to keep long ago. The city's gray haze mirrored his thoughts. Clear answers felt out of reach, yet Zoe's courage demanded action. Back at Apex, the corporate machine awaited, its gears already grinding against his impromptu detour. Graham glanced at Zoe, her hazel eyes scanning the skyline, and felt an unfamiliar resolve take root. They stepped into the gleaming lobby, where Sarah, the receptionist, shot Graham a wary look. "Mr. Caldwell, James has been calling nonstop. The board's asking questions." Graham nodded curtly, his focus on Zoe. "Take her to my office, Sarah. Make sure she's comfortable." Zoe hesitated, clutching her backpack. "I can wait by myself, Mr. Caldwell. I'm good at it." Her matter-of-fact tone hit Graham like a quiet blow. Self-reliance born of necessity, not choice. He knelt to her level. "Not today, Zoe. You've done enough heavy lifting." Her shy smile, missing a front tooth, softened the edges of his resolve. Up in his office, Graham sank into his chair, the city sprawling below like a chessboard he'd mastered for years. Zoe perched on the plush chair across his desk, flipping through her mother's portfolio with care. "Mom says these are her success stories," she said, pointing to a project summary. "She built an app that doctors use to track patients. It saved a hospital $1 million. Graham raised an eyebrow, impressed anew by Laura's credentials and Zoe's grasp of them. "Your mom sounds like she doesn't give up," he said, his voice probing. Zoe nodded. "She says giving up is like telling me it's okay to stop trying." Graham's phone buzzed. James again. "Sir, the investor call is rescheduled, but Olivia Grant wants a word. She's heard about the hospital visit." Graham's jaw tightened. Olivia, the HR director, was a gatekeeper of Apex's rigid culture, and her scrutiny was the last thing he needed. "Tell her I'm busy," he replied, ending the call. He turned to Zoe. "Tell me more about your mom's work." Zoe's eyes lit up, launching into a detailed explanation of Laura's coding projects, her small fingers tracing charts as if she'd memorized every line. Graham listened, half distracted by the storm brewing beyond these walls. A knock interrupted them. James entered, his graying hair disheveled, a rare crack in his polished demeanor. "Sir, I need a moment. Alone." Graham glanced at Zoe, who was engrossed in a diagram. "Stay here, Zoe. I'll be right outside." Stepping into the hallway, Graham faced James's stern expression. "Graham, you're raising eyebrows, canceling meetings, visiting hospitals, and bringing a kid into the office. The board's already whispering about favoritism." Graham's eyes narrowed. "I'm assessing a candidate. Her daughter's presence is incidental." James sighed. "It's not incidental when you're paying her medical bills. Olivia's sniffing around and she's not alone." Graham's fists clenched, the memory of Emily's hospital bed flashing again, her small hand slipping from his as bills piled up. "Laura Carter's qualifications are exceptional. If Apex can't see that because she's a single mother, that's our failure, not hers." James softened, but his warning lingered. "Just be careful, Graham. You're not just fighting for a hire, you're challenging the system." Graham nodded, returning to his office, where Zoe was now doodling a volcano on a notepad. "For my science project," she explained, grinning. "Mom says I'm going to win." The image disarmed him, pulling him back to a moment with Emily, her laughter over a school project about stars. He shook it off, picking up his phone. "James, get me the head of billing at Seattle General. I want Laura Carter's expenses handled discreetly." Zoe's head snapped up. "You're paying for Mom's hospital? Really?" Graham met her gaze. "Your mom deserves a fair shot, Zoe. This is just leveling the field." Her face broke into a beaming smile, and she slid off the chair, hugging his leg before he could react. You're like Batman, but with a suit instead of a cape. Graham froze, the warmth of her gesture cracking his carefully built walls. He cleared his throat, stepping back. Let's go see your mom again. I need to know her recovery timeline. They returned to Seattle General, the hospital's fluorescent lights casting long shadows. Laura looked stronger, her oxygen mask gone, though fatigue still lined her eyes. Mr. Caldwell, you didn't have to come back, she said, her voice steadier. Graham sat, his tone businesslike but kind. I'm here to discuss your future with Apex. Your daughter made a strong case, but I need to hear it from you. Laura's gaze flickered to Zoe, who was rearranging get-well cards on the bedside table. I've led high-stakes projects under impossible deadlines, Laura said. I built a telemedicine platform that cut patient wait times by 30%, but being a single mom means I'm judged before I start. Graham leaned forward. Then change the judgment. Your interview's set for next week once you're cleared. Apex needs talent, not excuses. Laura's eyes searched his. Why take this risk on me? Graham hesitated, Emily's face flickering in his mind. Because I know what it's like to lose someone to a system that doesn't care. As they left, Zoe skipped beside him, her optimism infectious. Mom's gonna ace that interview, right? Graham's lips curved slightly. If she's half as determined as you, she will. But as they stepped into the rain, his phone buzzed again. Olivia's name on the screen. We need to talk, Graham. Now. The edge in her voice promised trouble, a warning that his actions were shaking Apex's foundations. Graham pocketed the phone, glancing at Zoe. Her courage had ignited something he couldn't ignore. But the fight ahead would test more than his resolve. It would demand he confront a past he'd buried for too long. The echo of Graham Caldwell's footsteps followed him from the hospital's sterile corridors back to the gleaming heart of Apex Innovations, where the air buzzed with unspoken tension. Zoe Carter's small hand had left a warmth in his palm that lingered, her unwavering trust a quiet challenge to the corporate world he'd mastered. But as he stepped into the boardroom, the weight of her hope clashed with the cold scrutiny of Apex's elite. The long mahogany table gleamed under LED lights, its surface reflecting the stern faces of the board members. Outside, Seattle's rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, a restless rhythm that matched the pulse in Graham's temple. He'd stirred a hornet's nest, and the sting was coming. Olivia Grant, the HR director, sat at the far end, her manicured nails tapping a slow, deliberate beat. Her sharp eyes locked on Graham as he took his place at the head of the table. Ladies and gentlemen, Graham began, his voice steady, we're here to discuss a new initiative, the Life Balance Program. Flexible hours, childcare support, remote options, designed to retain talent like Laura Carter, whose qualifications rival anyone in this industry. He slid a folder across the table. Laura's resume and project metrics neatly compiled, thanks to Zoe's dogged presentation. Olivia's lips curved into a thin smile, her tone smooth but barbed. Graham, while Ms. Carter's credentials are impressive, your personal involvement raises concerns. Paying her hospital bills, bringing her child into the C-suite, it's unorthodox to say the least. Murmurs rippled through the board, a few heads nodding. Richard Hayes, a silver-haired board member, leaned forward. Apex is a tech leader, not a charity. Clients expect stability, not headlines about our CEO playing savior. Graham's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. This isn't charity, it's a strategy. Talent like Laura's is bleeding out to competitors because of outdated biases. From his pocket, Graham's phone buzzed faintly. A call from Laura, still in her hospital bed. He'd asked her to be on standby, anticipating resistance. Let's hear from the candidate herself, he said, connecting the call on speaker. Laura's voice, though weakened, carried a steely resolve. I've delivered platforms that save companies millions. Most recently, a telemedicine system with a 98% uptime. I'm not asking for special treatment, just a chance to prove I can do the same for Apex. Her words silenced the room, her data cutting through the skepticism like a blade. Olivia shifted undeterred. Ms. Carter, your skills aren't in question, but your circumstances are. Single parenthood often means absences, distractions. Our clients demand reliability. Laura's response was swift, her voice sharpening. I've managed projects while raising a daughter alone. If anything, single parents are the most disciplined workers you'll find. We don't have time for inefficiency. A few board members exchanged glances, impressed, but Olivia pressed on. And yet your daughter walked into our lobby, disrupting operations. That's not a ringing endorsement. Graham's eyes narrowed, catching a glint of something calculated in Olivia's tone. Zoe Carter showed initiative most executives lack, he countered. And this program isn't just for Laura, it's for the dozens of employees we lose to rigid policies. He projected a slide on the boardroom screen, showing retention stats. 20% of Apex's top talent had left in 2 years, citing work-life balance issues. This initiative will cut turnover and boost productivity. The numbers don't lie. Richard cleared his throat. Numbers are one thing, Graham, but perception matters. A leaked article in Tech Pulse this morning questions your judgment, mentions your sister's passing even. That's personal, not business. Graham's blood ran cold. The article, anonymously sourced, had dug into his past. Emily's death from a chronic lung condition, the hospital bills he couldn't pay as a young man. Only a handful at Apex knew those details. His gaze flicked to Olivia, whose expression remained impassive, but her fingers stilled. Who leaked it? Graham asked, his voice low, dangerous. Olivia met his stare. I'd be careful throwing accusations, Graham. This could be anyone disgruntled by your distractions. The room tensed, the rain outside pounding harder. Graham leaned forward. Whoever it was, they've miscalculated. Apex will move forward, with or without their approval. He turned to the board. Laura's interview is next week. The Life Balance program launches in a month. Any objections? Silence hung, broken only by the rain's relentless beat. Laura's voice crackled through the speaker. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, for the opportunity. I won't let Apex down. The call ended, her words lingering like a promise. The board adjourned, but Olivia lingered, her smile tight. You're playing a dangerous game, Graham. The board won't tolerate instability. Graham stood, towering over her. Instability is losing talent to prejudice. If you're not on board, Olivia, you're in the way. She left without a word, her heels clicking like a countdown. Back in his office, Graham found Zoe waiting, her volcano sketch now a detailed diagram. Did Mom do okay? She asked, eyes wide with hope. Graham nodded, managing a smile. She did better than okay. You both did. Zoe beamed, but Graham's mind churned. The article's leak was no accident. Someone, likely Olivia, was weaponizing his past. He opened his laptop, pulling up Apex's archived files. If Olivia was playing dirty, he'd need ammunition of his own. As Zoe chattered about her science project, Graham's thoughts drifted to Emily, her laughter, her frail hands clutching a star chart. Laura and Zoe were fighting the same system that had failed his sister, and he'd be damned if he let it win again. The rain outside slowed, but the storm within Apex was just beginning. Olivia's move had drawn first blood, and Graham knew the next battle would test not just his leadership, but the man he was becoming. The rain had dwindled to a faint drizzle, leaving Seattle's skyline shimmering under a tentative moon as Graham Caldwell sat alone in his office at Apex Innovations. The glow of his laptop cast sharp shadows across his face, illuminating a stack of old files he'd pulled from the company's archives. Zoe Carter's infectious optimism from earlier that day lingered, her volcano sketch still on his desk. But the sting of the Tech Pulse article gnawed at him. Someone had weaponized his past, Emily's death, the hospital bills he couldn't pay, and Olivia Grant's calculated smile in the boardroom pointed to her as the culprit. Graham's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his resolve hardening. If secrets were the game, he'd play to win. He opened a folder labeled Personnel Policies 2005-2010, buried deep in Apex's digital vaults. The files were relics from the tenure of the previous CEO, a man whose legacy of profit over people still haunted the company's culture. As Graham scrolled, his breath caught an email chain from Olivia, then a junior HR assistant, to the former CEO. To maintain workforce efficiency, it read, we've implemented performance metrics prioritizing employees without family obligations. This naturally filters out those with childcare conflicts. Another memo detailed high-risk hires, women with young children, flagged for stricter evaluations. The pattern was clear: deliberate exclusion, veiled as business sense. Graham's hands trembled, the screen blurring as memories of Emily surged. Her frail form in a hospital bed, her dreams of becoming an astronomer cut short. He'd blamed himself for years, thinking his focus on building Apex had distracted him from saving her. But this was systemic, a machine designed to crush people like Laura Carter, and Olivia had been part of it. His phone buzzed. James, his assistant, checking in. "Found anything yet?" James asked, his voice low. Graham's reply was curt. "Enough to bury someone. Keep this quiet." A soft knock broke his focus. Zoe stood in the doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder, a science project binder in hand. "Mom sent me to wait here," she said, her voice bright but tentative. "Mrs. Larson fell asleep, and Mom's still tired from the hospital." Graham's chest tightened. Laura, still recovering, was trusting him with her daughter. He gestured to the chair. "Come in, Zoe. Show me that project." She bounded over, spreading her volcano diagram across the desk, her enthusiasm a stark contrast to the dark truths he'd just uncovered. "It's gonna erupt with baking soda and vinegar," Zoe explained, pointing to her sketch. "Mom helped me calculate the ratios so it's big but not messy." Graham leaned forward, her words pulling him from the mire of his thoughts. "Sounds like your mom's good at planning," he said, his voice softer than usual. Zoe nodded, her ponytail bouncing. "She says planning keeps things from falling apart. Like us." The simplicity of her words hit Graham hard, echoing the resilience he'd seen in Laura at the hospital. He glanced at the laptop, the damning email still open. "Zoe, does your mom ever talk about why it's hard to get jobs?" Zoe's brow furrowed, her small fingers tracing the volcano's outline. "She says people think she'll miss work because of me, but Mom always gets stuff done, even when she's sick." Graham's jaw clenched, the files on his screen a mirror to Laura's struggle. He closed the laptop, his decision crystallizing. "Your mom's right about planning," he said. "Sometimes you have to plan a fight to make things fair." Another knock. James, his expression grim. "Olivia's on her way up. She knows you're digging." Graham stood, his voice low. "Let her come." When Olivia entered, her polished facade was intact, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Graham, working late?" she asked, her tone syrupy. "Or are you chasing ghosts?" Graham gestured for Zoe to keep working, then stepped closer to Olivia. "I found more than ghosts, Olivia. I found proof. Your emails, your policies. You built a system to push out people like Laura Carter." Olivia's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Those were different times, Graham. I followed orders. If you drag this out, it's not just me you'll burn. It's Apex and your precious life balance program." Her gaze flicked to Zoe, who was engrossed in her sketch. "Think about the headlines. Your sister's tragedy, your obsession with this family. It'll look like a midlife crisis, not leadership." Graham's fists clenched, but Zoe's voice cut through. "Mr. Caldwell, Mom says if you're doing the right thing, you don't have to be scared." She looked up, her eyes clear and unwavering. Graham's anger steadied, Zoe's words anchoring him. "Olivia, you have until the board meeting tomorrow to explain yourself. But know this, I'm not backing down." Olivia's lips pressed into a line, and she left without another word, her heels echoing like a retreating storm. Graham turned to Zoe, who was adding a red crayon to her volcano's lava. "You're pretty brave, you know that?" he said, his voice thick. Zoe grinned. "Mom says bravery's just doing what's right, even when it's hard." As he drove Zoe home, the city's lights blurred through the rain-streaked windows. The files on his laptop were a ticking bomb, but Zoe's chatter about her science fair filled the car with warmth. Graham's mind raced. Exposing Olivia meant risking Apex's reputation, but staying silent meant betraying Laura, Zoe, and even Emily's memory. He glanced at Zoe, asleep against the seat, her binder clutched tight. Her courage had lit a fire he couldn't extinguish, and tomorrow's board meeting would be its first test. The battle lines were drawn, and Graham knew the cost of winning might be higher than he'd ever imagined. The storm had passed, leaving Seattle's skyline crisp under a rare morning sun, But the air inside Apex Innovations' boardroom crackled with a different kind of tempest. Graham Caldwell stood at the head of the long mahogany table, his charcoal suit a stark contrast to the bright light streaming through the windows. Laura Carter, freshly discharged from the hospital, stood beside him, her navy blazer slightly dated, but her posture unyielding. The board members sat in uneasy silence, their eyes darting between Graham, Laura, and Olivia Grant, whose composed facade barely masked the tension in her clenched hands. Zoe's words from the night before, "If you're doing the right thing, you don't have to be scared," echoed in Graham's mind, steeling him for the fight ahead. He slid a stack of printed emails across the table, their contents damning. "These documents," Graham began, his voice cutting through the room's hush, "reveal a policy under the previous CEO, enforced by Olivia Grant, to systematically exclude women with young children from Apex. Metrics designed to penalize family obligations, evaluations rigged to push them out." Gas rippled through the board. Richard Hayes, the silver-haired skeptic, adjusted his glasses, scanning the pages. "This is disturbing," he muttered, his usual bluster subdued. Olivia leaned forward, her tone icy. "Those were standard practices a decade ago, Graham. You're digging up ancient history to deflect from your own questionable judgment." She gestured toward Laura. "Paying hospital bills, canceling meetings for her daughter. It's personal, not professional." Graham's eyes narrowed, but Laura spoke first, her voice clear despite the faint rasp of her recent illness. "With respect, Ms. Grant, my qualifications aren't personal. I led a team that built a telemedicine platform with a 2 million user base, cutting costs by 30%. Apex needs that expertise, not outdated biases." Graham projected a slide onto the screen, graphs showing a 15% productivity spike in teams piloting the Life Balance program. "Laura's right," he said. "This initiative isn't just about her, it's about retaining talent we're losing. Turnover's down 20% in participating departments. The numbers speak for themselves," Laura added, her gaze sweeping the room. "I've been rejected by 6 companies because I'm a single mother, but I've delivered under pressure while raising a daughter alone. That's not a liability, it's efficiency." The board stirred, some nodding, others exchanging wary glances. Olivia's smile was razor-thin. "Numbers are one thing, but perception is another." The Tech Pulse article questions Graham's objectivity, his focus on this family. Her pause was deliberate, her eyes flicking to Laura. Graham's voice dropped, cold and precise. "That article used details about my sister's death. Details only someone in this room could know. Care to explain, Olivia?" The room froze, all eyes on her. Olivia's composure cracked, her fingers twitching. "You're implying I leaked it? That's absurd. Anyone could have accessed your files." Graham nodded to James, who stood by the door, distributing a new set of documents. "Not anyone," Graham said. "Metadata from the leaked email traces back to your account, Olivia. Sent 3 days ago to TechPulse." The board erupted in murmurs. Richard snatched a copy, his face darkening as he read. Olivia stood, her voice rising. "This is a setup. My email was hacked." Graham's smile was grim. "By someone with your exact login patterns?" "Unlikely. You targeted me to kill the Life Balance program. It ends now." Laura stepped forward, her presence commanding, despite her recent hospital stay. "This isn't just about me or Graham. It's about every employee Apex has lost to policies like yours. I've raised a daughter while delivering results. If that's a risk, it's one worth taking." Her words landed like a gavel, silencing Olivia's protests. Richard cleared his throat. "I move we terminate Olivia Grant for ethics violations and formalize the Life Balance program across Apex." Another board member, Martina Chen, nodded. "Seconded, and I propose an investigation into past HR practices." The vote was swift, 9-2. Olivia's face drained of color as security was called. "You'll regret this, Graham," she hissed, gathering her things. "The board won't forget your recklessness." Graham met her gaze, unflinching. "They'll remember results. Goodbye, Olivia." As she was escorted out, the room exhaled, the tension breaking like a snapped wire. Laura turned to Graham, her eyes steady. Thank you for fighting for this. For us. Graham nodded, a weightlifter. You fought just as hard. The board adjourned, but Richard lingered, his expression softer. You took a risk, Graham. It paid off, but you've made enemies. Graham shrugged, his mind already elsewhere. Enemies I can handle. Losing talent like Laura's? That's the real cost. He glanced at Laura, who was gathering her notes. Your official interview's Monday. Don't hold back. She smiled, a spark of defiance in her eyes. I never do. As they left the boardroom, Graham's phone buzzed. A text from James. Stocks up 2 points. Investors like the program. Graham pocketed the phone, his thoughts drifting to Zoe, waiting in his office with her volcano project. Her courage had sparked this victory, but the Tech Pulse article's fallout lingered. The board's approval was won, but whispers of his personal crusade would persist. He found Zoe sketching, her enthusiasm undimmed. Did you and Mom win? She asked, eyes wide. Graham knelt beside her. We did, thanks to you. Zoe grinned, handing him a crayon. Draw the lava with me. For a moment, the corporate battles faded, replaced by the simple joy of a child's trust. But as Graham added red streaks to her volcano, he knew the fight wasn't over. Olivia's allies were still out there, and the truth he'd uncovered about Apex's past was a Pandora's box. Whatever came next, he'd face it, not as the Iron Titan, but as a man reshaped by a girl's unwavering heart. The victory in the boardroom still hummed in Graham Caldwell's veins as he stepped out of Apex Innovations into the soft glow of a Seattle evening. The city's drizzle had given way to a golden dusk, and the warmth of Zoe Carter's crayon-drawn volcano lingered in his mind, a vivid contrast to the cold corporate battles of the day. Laura Carter's steady voice, defending her worth in the Life Balance program, had sealed their triumph. But Graham felt a deeper shift, one that tugged at the walls he'd built since losing his sister Emily. Tonight, he wasn't heading to his sterile penthouse, but to Laura's modest home in the suburbs, invited for a thank-you dinner. The thought both unsettled and anchored him. Laura's small townhouse glowed from within, its windows spilling light onto a lawn cluttered with Zoe's bike in a half-finished science project. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of garlic and tomato sauce, a warmth that felt foreign to Graham after years of takeout and boardroom coffee. Zoe greeted him at the door, an oversized apron tied around her waist, her grin wide and missing a tooth. I helped make spaghetti, she announced, tugging him toward the dining table, where mismatched plates were set with care. Laura emerged from the kitchen, her chestnut hair loose, her face brighter than it had been in the hospital. Hope you're hungry, Mr. Caldwell, she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. Zoe's gone all out. Graham shed his suit jacket, feeling oddly exposed in a simple shirt, and took a seat. Call me Graham, he said, surprising himself. Laura raised an eyebrow, but her smile was warm. Graham, it is. The meal unfolded with easy chatter, Zoe recounting her science fair victory, her volcano erupting to cheers at school. I used Mom's math to make it perfect, she said, twirling spaghetti. Graham listened, captivated by her enthusiasm, and shared a memory of Emily, her star charts scattered across their childhood kitchen. She'd have loved your volcano, he said, his voice catching. Zoe beamed. Maybe she's watching it from the stars. Laura's eyes met Graham's, a quiet understanding passing between them. After dinner, Zoe insisted on showing her project binder, pages filled with colorful diagrams. Mom says planning's everything, she said, pointing to a chart. Graham nodded, his mind turning to the future. Speaking of planning, he began, leaning forward, I'm starting a foundation, the Life Balance Foundation, to help companies support working families. Laura, you'd be perfect to run it. Laura's fork paused midair, her eyes widening. Me? That's huge. I'm just getting my footing at Apex. You're more than ready, Graham said, his tone firm but warm. You understand the stakes, corporate systems, single parenthood, all of it. The foundation needs someone who's lived it. Zoe bounced in her seat. Mom's like a superhero. She can do it. Laura laughed, but worry creased her brow. It's a lot, Graham. Zoe's my priority. What if I can't balance it all? Graham leaned closer, his voice steady. You won't be alone. The foundation will have resources, childcare, flexible hours. You've already shown you can handle anything. Laura studied him, her gaze searching. Why this? Why now? Graham hesitated, Emily's face flickering in his mind. Because I spent years building Apex to escape my past, losing my sister, failing her. You and Zoe reminded me there's more to success than profits. This foundation could change lives. Laura's expression softened, but she pressed, and what about you, Graham? What do you want from this? The question hung, heavy with unspoken possibilities. He held her gaze. I'm starting to figure that out. Zoe, oblivious to the tension, tugged Graham's sleeve. Draw another volcano with me. Her insistence broke the moment, and Graham obliged, sketching beside her as Laura watched, a smile playing on her lips. Later, as Zoe cleared plates, Laura leaned closer. The board's still watching you, aren't they? That article's fallout isn't over. Graham nodded, his jaw tight. Some shareholders are grumbling, saying the program's a PR stunt. But the numbers are on our side. Productivity's up, turnover's down. Laura's eyes narrowed. And Olivia's allies? They won't let this go quietly. Graham's smile was grim. Let them try. I'm done playing defense. As Zoe returned, proudly presenting a lopsided garlic bread, Graham felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. The cluttered table, strewn with Zoe's drawings and Laura's recipe notes, was a world away from Apex's sterile boardroom. You're different here, Laura observed, her voice soft. Less Iron Titan. Graham chuckled, the nickname stinging less than it once would have. Maybe I'm remembering who I was before all this. Laura's gaze held his, a question lingering, but she didn't press. The evening wound down, and Graham stood to leave, Zoe hugging him goodbye. Come back soon, okay? Mom smiles more when you're here. Laura flushed, shooing Zoe to bed, but her embarrassed glance at Graham spoke volumes. As he stepped into the cool night, the stars above Seattle felt brighter, closer. His phone buzzed, a shareholder email demanding a meeting about the Carter situation. Graham ignored it, his thoughts on Laura's question. What do you want? For years, Apex had been his identity, a shield against loss. Now, with Zoe's laughter and Laura's strength in his mind, he saw a different path, one he wasn't sure he deserved, but one he couldn't ignore. Driving back, the city's lights blurred, mirroring the shift in his heart. The foundation was a start, but the real battle was personal, daring to care again, to risk loss for connection. Tomorrow he'd face the shareholders, but tonight he let himself imagine a future where family, not empire, defined him. The golden dusk of the previous evening had given way to a vibrant morning at Apex Innovations, where the lobby buzzed with anticipation. The grand atrium, once a cold expanse of marble and glass, was now alive with banners proclaiming the launch of the Life Balance Foundation. Hundreds of business leaders, reporters, and employees filled the space, their voices blending into a hum of excitement. Graham Caldwell stood at the podium, his charcoal suit replaced by a navy one, softer but no less commanding. Beside him, Laura Carter radiated quiet confidence, her navy dress catching the light, a silver compass bracelet, Graham's gift, once his sister Emily's, glinting on her wrist. Zoe, now 9, darted through the crowd, handing out brochures with a grin that lit the room. The victory over Olivia Grant and the board felt like a lifetime ago, but its ripples were about to become a wave. Graham adjusted the microphone, his voice steady but warm, a far cry from the Iron Titan of old. A year ago, a child walked into this lobby and changed everything, he began, his eyes finding Zoe, who waved a brochure proudly. Zoe Carter, 8 years old, showed up to fight for her mother's chance, a chance Apex almost denied her. Today we launched the Life Balance Foundation to ensure no company makes that mistake again. The crowd erupted in applause, cameras flashing. Laura stepped forward, her voice clear and commanding. Our pilot program at Apex boosted productivity by 15% and cut turnover by 20%. 10 companies have joined us, impacting 5,000 families. This isn't just policy, it's a movement. Zoe, unable to contain herself, tugged at Laura's sleeve and whispered loudly, Can I talk now? The crowd chuckled, and Graham knelt, handing her the microphone. Go ahead, Chief Testing Officer. Zoe stood on a chair, her ponytail bouncing. Companies should have places for kids like me, so moms and dads don't worry. Happy parents work better. Her simple logic drew laughter and nods, her missing tooth adding charm to her conviction. Graham's chest swelled, a pride he hadn't felt since Emily's school plays. But a shadow loomed. A rival tech firm, Nexus Corp, had spread rumors overnight, calling the foundation a PR gimmick in a scathing press release. A reporter raised a hand. Mr. Caldwell, critics say this is just Apex dodging accountability for past HR failures. Your response? Graham's smile was calm, but his eyes flashed with steel. Critics can read our data, publicly available, unlike their own. We've owned our mistakes and built something better. That's not a gimmick, it's progress. Laura added, Nexus Corp's turnover rate is 30%. They might want to take notes. The crowd murmured approval, the rumor diffused by their united front. As the event continued, Graham's gaze drifted to Laura and Zoe, now laughing with a group of CEOs. The silver compass on Laura's wrist caught the light, a symbol of the direction they'd found together. A year ago, he'd been a man defined by loss, Apex his only anchor. Now the gold band on his left hand, matched by Laura's, told a new story. They'd married quietly 3 months prior, a decision born of late-night talks, and Zoe's insistence that families choose each other. Graham leaned toward Laura, his voice low. Ready for this adventure? She smiled, her hand brushing his. We've been ready since Zoe stormed your lobby. The event wound down, but Zoe bounded over, clutching a brochure. Mr. Graham, I told everyone about the kids' spaces. They loved it. Her use of his first name, a recent habit, warmed him. He knelt to her level. You're the real star here, Zoe. She grinned, then grew serious. Does this mean we're a family now? Like forever? The question hung, laden with a child's hope. Graham glanced at Laura, who nodded, her eyes soft. Forever's a good start, he said, ruffling Zoe's hair. A final surprise awaited. Martina Chen, the board member who'd backed Graham against Olivia, approached with a proposal. 3 Fortune 500 companies want to fund the foundation's expansion. Nationwide, maybe global. Graham's breath caught, the scope of their impact sinking in. Let's make it happen, he said, his voice thick. Martina smiled. You've changed Apex, Graham, and not just the policies. She glanced at Laura and Zoe, her meaning clear. As the crowd dispersed, Graham, Laura, and Zoe stood together, the atrium's lights casting a halo around them. Graham pulled a small box from his pocket, handing it to Zoe. Inside was a tiny compass charm, matching Laura's bracelet. For our chief testing officer, he said. Zoe's eyes widened, and she threw her arms around them both. This is the best day ever, she declared, her voice echoing through the lobby. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the trio's embrace, a testament to a journey begun by a child's courage. Graham's gaze lingered on Laura, her strength a mirror to his own transformation. The foundation was their legacy, but this moment, their family, was his true victory. As they stepped into the evening, Seattle's stars twinkling above, Graham knew the battles weren't over. Rivals like Nexus Corp would push back, and shareholders would grumble. But with Laura's hand in his and Zoe's laughter leading the way, he was ready. A child had taught him that courage could heal even the deepest wounds, and together they'd build a future where no family had to fight alone. As Graham, Laura, and Zoe stepped into Seattle's starlit night, their intertwined hands marked a triumph born of a child's courage. A single act, Zoe's bold stand in Apex's lobby, sparked a revolution, reshaping a corporate empire and healing hearts scarred by loss. The Life Balance Foundation now lights the way for countless families, proving love and bravery can rewrite any story. Thank you for listening to this journey of hope and transformation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Tell us where you're tuning in from and when. Curious about more stories of courage? Stay with us for what's next.